Welcome to a new episode of My First Job, the podcast, where we explore career journeys in several fields and come across interesting people who've done interesting things. So, my name is Venugopal, and I am the CEO of Ideascape. Today, we have Amit Potnis. Amit runs a company called the Papaya Project. He started off in marketing and then worked in several jobs in a 7 year span. So, this is somewhere between those intermediate stages where we've had conversations with people who are starting off, we've had conversations with people who are very experienced, and now we're talking about someone who made the switch from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. And here's one of the posts that I'd like to quote from, which Amit had written on LinkedIn. I don't remember liking school or college, wearing a uniform, reporting at a certain time at a specific location, and working hard or hardly towards a massive goal, exams. It was a scary period, and I'm glad that period is never going to return. Some of us have pleasant memories of school, but obviously Amit couldn't wait to get out of there. So he's been through health tech, AR, VR, enterprise mobility, and now he runs a vegan cosmetic brand which he has launched. So let's bring Amit on stage and talk to him about his career journey. Hi, Amit,
Great morning, sir. Hello, hello. First of all, thank you very
and
much
good to
for
have.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
please go ahead.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this platform. So this is my first ever podcast, and I feel very nice to do it with you, someone who is very experienced and in a field that is close to me right now, which is branding, marketing, advertising.
Wonderful. Okay, so Amit, I think before we come to where you are right now,
Yeah.
let's dive into what your influences were. Where did you, start your schooling? Do you remember parts of? You obviously don't recall school very fondly, but there are some aspects of it that you would remember, and it would be nice to know what you've done.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So I'll start with my formative years. So I was born in Pune. Then we were in Delhi for some time. We were in Thane for some time. But most of my education that was in Muscat, which is in Oman, right? Muscat, Oman, you must have heard about. And these frequent changes were due to my father's work, and I'll come to the family a little later on. So schooling and education overall, what I studied, I didn't definitely like it. I knew I wanted to work and do something on my own, and those restrictions which I've mentioned in the article, those were something that really horrified me. Talking a little bit about my family. So we are a family of four. My sister's married now. She's in the States. My mother is a homemaker, and my father, he has been a successful first generation entrepreneur. So he was the founder and ex managing director of Nitor Infotech, which is a software company based in Pune. And he recently sold the company. So now he's involved in more or less social activities, so some social causes which he's working on.
Okay. So, what are the parts of school that you recall in terms of something making an impact on you, or was it something where you couldn't wait to get out of there? What is it that you remember?
Yeah. So for a long time in my life, I would say, I'm definitely an introvert, though people don't look at me otherwise. But probably the social anxiety, being in the school or being in the college and seeing other students or other people perform in academics or otherwise. So the only subjects which I liked were mathematics, which I was probably good at, and the other one was science. So I was planning if I could take the science stream, but I chose commerce because I think as I mentioned, I wanted to do something on my own and set up a business later on. Yeah. So here is where I would like to talk a little bit about my college. So
Yeah, yeah. Please.
so we moved back to Pune from Muscat in 2008. So 2008, I had completed my 10th, and then I was in Pune in Maharashtra, as they call it, as the first year or the second year junior college. So I was in Symbiosis here in Pune, yeah, the main one, and then I moved to Symbiosis, which is in Viman Nagar, which is near the
Okay.
airport. So all these 5 years, these years were pretty good because, again, as I said, it was more about business and understanding those different subjects. I chose finance as my main specialization for various different reasons, but that was something which I did not like at all. So I had got a placement in KPMG, which is one of the big four companies, as we know.
Right.
But I did not do anything in finance till now. After that, so it has all been sales and marketing and business development.
Okay. Now, this is since your dad's been an entrepreneur, your father's been an entrepreneur. I suppose one of the differences is that a lot of young people today don't take risks, especially business risks, early on, because either for various reasons. One is that they are financially not comfortable. They see that, or the ability to take risk itself is not well formed. So, what was your reaction? What was your father's reaction when you told him about starting off this company?
Correct. Should I talk a little bit about the early years where I spent, or
Yeah,
should I be
yeah.
talking right
This
now?
is
Yeah,
we can go. This is about your life. So
yeah.
I think anything that you want to dive in and speak more deeply about, please go ahead.
Sure, sure. So after college, as I said, it has been all sales and marketing for me. The
Yeah.
very first company that I joined, so most of my uh, work, the time that I spent in, has been in smaller or largely startups, smaller organizations or in startups. So the very first company that I joined was a startup which was into enterprise mobility. At that time, this
Okay.
was a big word because companies were
Right.
just starting out. This was in 2013, and
Right.
this company eventually was sold profitably, and it was just a small company of around 50 employees. So I joined there as a trainee. It was a very good experience where I was working with this team, mainly for calling, pre-sales, getting leads, presentations, sales. After which I moved into Nitor Infotech, which was where I was working with my father. This was again mainly involved business development, sales, and marketing for the India division. So I have not worked in
Okay.
international markets. The company Nitor that's mainly focused on international market, which is US, Canada, and Europe. But I was handling the India product division where we were selling human resource management systems. So we had to pitch our solution to a senior HR leader in India and hope that eventually it would convert. And uh,
Right.
the challenge throughout my career has been that whichever products I worked on, all were products that were just recently launched. Okay,
Okay.
so that's a very difficult challenge, which I have to explain in case if uh, when I was applying to newer jobs later on for newer companies, because the sales figures ultimately for a sales individual, what sales professional, what they look at is what are the numbers that were achieved, right? And in
Right.
all cases, all were startups. So
Right.
the CV doesn't show, but what
Right.
the work that has been in the background. So, as I said, first was into enterprise mobility. Then I was into human resource management system. Then I joined another interesting startup which was in the AR VR space. It was a Pune. It is a Pune-based startup. I was there for some time. So the challenge here was even more multifold because AR VR technology is still relatively new compared to more of the other traditional products that I spoke about. So I was there for some time. Then I moved on to employee well-being. So I was with HPS Wellness, which is a health tech startup, again
Okay.
on a very new concept. And after which I started the Papaya project.
So, in each of this, Amit, can you tell me what your first job was? Which was your first interview? Which was your first job? What did you get into? And where did it begin?
Correct. So the first job was, the name of the company was Mobian Technologies. As I mentioned, it was into enterprise mobility. So a little glimpse of what the product was. So we were selling to, let's say, there's a cement manufacturer, there's a cement brand in India, and they have got their field sales executives. Now this is all very common, and the technology has gone much beyond. But at that time, when individuals did not have many smartphones, how do you make things and the data quickly available to a field sales executive so that he or
Right.
she can make that sale quickly? So that was the kind of product. And what I was involved into was purely making calls, talking to the customers on call, seeing to that they don't hang up the phone in the middle of the call, uh, getting web research, identifying the right set of qualified leads, and ultimately taking it to closure. So of course, I was a trainee
How
back
many
then.
calls would you make a day? How many calls would you make in a day?
This, so it involved multiple things. So calls was one part of
Right.
the in that, my day. Apart from that, making some presentations and all. So on a daily basis, I used to make somewhere around 40 calls.
40 calls.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
in a large number of these cases, like you said, your job was to ensure that the client stayed interested, that you weren't rejected. So, what
correct.
were the things that you discovered could keep the client online? Or how did you get better at your job over time? What is it that you learned not to do?
Correct. I think the situation back then and now is slightly different,
Okay.
because the way I see, earlier used to not get that many calls. These days,
Right.
you're bombarded with calls. I myself, I get around 5 to 6 calls on a daily basis for a credit card, which I don't know why I'm going to use
Right.
it. But then at that
Yeah.
point in time, what used to happen was, and I think this is something that has always worked for me, is that, oh, if you're really genuine and if you understand what the other person is saying, and if they have a requirement, and or if you're able to create that need for them, that is when things work. If you come across someone who's too focused on getting that sale, things are not going
Yeah.
to work out, right? If you remember
Right.
those days earlier when people used to come knocking at our doors, I remember when I was at my grandfather's place for vacation, someone used to come at the door selling some soap or anything like that. He used to just bang the door, which was of course very bad. But then the point is, if you just jump on the other person trying to make that sale, that's
It's not
not.
going to happen.
And this is something that even my father has also told me, and of course I read it across various sales books. But having that genuine feeling of what you are trying to understand, what the other person is saying, and then seeing whether you want to continue and in what way you can proceed. I think that has always worked.
Okay. So these conversations are, like you said, lead generation and management. We know in advertising, I mean, when you do these, everything from prospecting to trying and figuring out which client will buy, and then actually getting to the point where you can have a conversation with them, and then trying to figure out what is it that seems to attract the client interest. How would you make out when a client you felt was willing to take the conversation a little further? What were the cues that you understood at that point? Okay. I think it's so. How would you make out, Amit, that a client is willing to talk further? What were your, because each salesperson or each marketing person has a way of getting through. And one of the things, like you said, is being genuine and being clear about understanding what the other person wanted. How did you develop that skill?
Correct. I think there's a lot of preparation that goes before you actually get on the call. And I think this is something which is ignored by many sales professionals, and which is a mistake that I also did. But you having a very good understanding of that client, what he or she is currently doing, would probably require what are the competitors, what's the market, what time of the day you're calling, what day of the week. This makes all these details are very important, right? You can't call someone at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. It's a very bad, very disastrous thing to do. But Tuesday
Yeah.
afternoon definitely sounds good. So, day of the week, time, all of these points definitely matter. In the conversation, I think that preparation comes into action. So, uh, you have understood the market, what he or she would probably require, and then navigating that entire conversation. So the conversation has always, it should be in your control. So a couple of things here. So I had undergone a couple of sales training from some of the very good organizations. So of course we have heard of open questions, leading questions, and neutral questions, and whether those are open and closed. So all of that, how do you remain in control of the conversation and take it forward? So I think this is something that always needs to be kept in mind.
Is there a particular sale that you remember? One of those things where you got the sale and you understood what exactly was going on, and that is memorable as far as you're concerned.
So I'll quote two. One is a memorable one, and the other one is, I would say, more emotional one. I will start with the more emotional one. So the first organization that I was working with, I was with them for a short period of time. I was planning to, after which I wanted to go for a spiritual course actually later on. That's why I left the first organization. But when I was working on the enterprise mobility product, I had got in touch with a Pune-based uh, dairy manufacturer. It was into dairy products, and I had researched about that company. I had presented that solution. I had called them up and I had presented the solution. Unfortunately, I would say, of course, fortunately for the organization, but just after I left, the deal was closed. So
Okay.
that was an emotional one because I had taken it up to a certain point, and within some time when I had left the organization, that went through.
It came.
So
Okay.
yeah, so that was something very nice because that was the first organization that I worked with. So it was
Right.
definitely a personal achievement. The other one was where I was working with on this AR/VR product. So we had approached a BSE listed organization which was into the chemicals space. It's a very popular organization, doing pretty good. And the great point over here was I was at the right place at the right time. So they had this big marketing event for their farmers. So their customers are farmers, large farmers with large lands, grape farmers. So they wanted to do this product launch where they wanted to show that product in an augmented reality format. And
Okay.
I happened to talk to their marketing head. I presented the solution, and within a couple of days, the deal had gone through, which otherwise would have taken 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a few things which you said: preparation, understanding what the client requires, uh, being at the right place at the right time, and the question of timing. That's the other part. It's sales are always looking at your customer's convenience, never your own. That
Correct, correct.
that is a fundamental realization which doesn't seem to get through to people because these most of these quota call centers which say that do 100 calls or 200 calls per
Yeah.
day end up getting rejected simply because they're calling at the wrong time and the person is
Okay.
not in a frame of mind to receive a call. Okay.
Correct, correct.
Now, as far as you're concerned, out of all the things you did, which was health and wellness and enterprise mobility and AR/VR, what was the point at which you decided to switch, or you decided that hey, I need to move on from here? What was the impetus for that?
Okay, so if you look at the underlying base, wherever I work, it has always been, and even I mentioned in my college as well, that I wanted to do something on my own. Okay. And multiple reasons for that. I would say I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to create something. Uh, so the concept of freedom, and I'll come to that when we talk more about the brand and what I'm currently doing. But the reason from moving on from the last to what I'm currently doing, that was multiple reasons. So, while I was working at my previous organization, which was into well-being, so it was an amazing product actually, which did not go forward. The company had to shut down, but it was based on modern science, then a combination of Ayurveda as well as using the right technology to put that across. That did not go forward, but what happened was that while I was working with them on marketing and sales, I came across, because one of the there are, it had a big panel of doctors, physicians, fitness trainers being a well-being solution. So one of them was a doctor here in Pune, and he had his own clinic and a skincare brand. I was voluntarily working with him and his team, and this is where I discovered that skincare and consumer market and consumer products is very exciting. Now, sir, if you really observe, what I've done in the past was all IT B2B sales. So we are selling to organizations, and
Right.
what eventually happens, who does it go to? Ultimate customers. We are never in contact with them. Right? We never see them because it's a B2B sort of a business. What I realized was I'm more interested in a business or starting a business where I can directly see, hopefully, the smiles of customers where I'm selling my products to.
Okay.
That gives a sort of, the word that we use is kick, right? That really hits you, and which I find very exciting and very interesting. So consumer products, and now that I was looking at consumer products. The most logical option, because I've already worked on something, was skincare. So that's where I began with the brand right now.
So, what was this doctor doing? What kind of skincare products was he selling? Or it was part of his practice?
Correct. It was part of his practice. He has a clinic here in Pune. Very good doctor. They have a good range of skincare products. We know them personally as family, but unfortunately, uh, uh, things don't materialize that easily. So we did have several rounds of interaction as to how we can partner, but that did not go forward. But I thought of utilizing that understanding and that time that I invested in creating something, because I already had a basic background. So I don't have a background in formulation, but luckily I got a very good formulation team here in Pune itself that had worked with large brands. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's almost, I don't know the word, that serendipity, that you're looking for something and that kind of materializes at a point when you're ready.
yeah, yeah,
It's one of those two things that maybe your attention is now focused on looking for those things, which is why you see them in the first place.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
people say that they just come across your radar exactly at a point when you're
yeah.
searching for them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct, correct. Here, I would like to just add one point.
Yeah.
I was talking to my family, and they were kind of concerned. They have been absolutely supportive since the beginning. Be it, of course, any physical support, emotional support, or financial support as well. Absolutely blessed and grateful to have all three of them by my side whenever I've required. I told them that we are going to start this. Okay, it's not me. We are going to start this, and I'm going to get the right people at the right time. So the way I found these people on LinkedIn was very strange, because they did not even have a good LinkedIn profile. I somehow found their name, what they do. I got their number and I got in touch with them. But if I would have rejected them on by looking at the LinkedIn profile, that would have been a big mistake. But I got a good formulation team. I got a good packaging team, because we get pretty good responses on the way the packaging has been. Yeah, so I said I'm going to start this, and the universe is going to give me the right people at the right time. So yeah, that did work out.
So, okay, we'll come to that, but I also am interested in your AR and VR phase, because that's one of the things which I think a lot of companies have struggled with over time. One is finding the right application. The other is providing it at a cost that a client is, like for example, in real estate, people would say that rather than, it's hard for people to come and make a client a site visit, so why don't we just give them these glasses where they can see what is the location and what walking inside that whole place looks like. But the early implementations of those were fairly expensive, and it required a fair amount of strapping up to actually see all of that. So
Right.
that's one of the things that I see with AR and VR, that finding a match between something that is not already possible and how does it take that experience to another level has been a hard job for a number of companies. What is the company that you were into? What kind of AR and VR were they doing?
Correct. So this was 5 years back. I was with them
Right.
in 2018. I'm pretty sure the situation has changed, but how much it has changed, I'm not sure of. I'm not really updated with that. But as you mentioned, it is right. The number of applications are various, which the company did work on, but the cost piece wasn't in really in proportion to
Matching.
the
Yeah.
returns that you would have got. We presented to several large companies as well, but several deals of those did not go forward because uh, we had. So I would like to give you one example of a company, Pune-based company, which is again a very large company here, which is a manufacturing company. We had several rounds of interaction with them as to how this can help and all, and they were all positive about it. They said, Amit, we'll look at the cost later on, don't worry about that. And when we presented the cost and what it would look like, they were blown away. They said we were looking at something which is 1/10 of what you're mentioning. So at that time, the number of applications were significant. So when I said manufacturing, it was something related to the engineering piece, design components. Then in marketing and sales, it had a pretty good use cases. As I mentioned, one was about the product launch. Then for training, so we were pitching to Suzlon, where their workers. So of course, the windmills are huge in height, right? Several meters.
Right.
So how do you really climb a windmill? So all of that in terms of training also is something that you can use AR and VR for. So it has huge number of applications. I'm sure people and organizations would have uh, understood more about it, but I'm not sure currently if it is something that is used by several organizations. In my opinion, it is still probably at a more advanced stage, but not being used widely.
Yeah. So it's actually quite uncanny how a new market development or a new concept development is among the toughest to break into,
Yeah, yeah,
simply because and I think you made a point early on that practically in all your early experiences you worked with startups.
yeah,
So in a sense that was a good training ground, because I think it would have tempered your expectations and built the conditioning that there's no such thing as an overnight success story,
yeah,
even if it's in categories which are well established, because the well established players are very strong.
yeah,
So there are points when you're trying to break into a cosmetic brand which has already been there for 30 years, 35 years,
yeah,
and then they have a very loyal base of customers. It's not easy to switch them.
yeah,
And cosmetics, I think, are among the most difficult, because the trust that you have to build in the product is among the hardest of, because it's something that people actually apply on their face. So
yeah,
apart
yeah.
from something that they eat, a product that you apply on your face is probably the next level of your
Sure.
trust circle that you have to build into.
Correct, correct.
So when you said in your mind you had something about starting your own company, but was that more of a somewhere saying somewhere down the line I'll do it and I'll look for it, or was it something that you were always looking? That is it something that you said, okay, when did you know that it was I'll do it now?
Right. So I left the previous organization in October 21. Okay, we
Okay.
were as a organization we were understanding that this product is not likely to go forward. We had given several attempts, And so anyways there was going to be a restructuring. So I was given an option if I would want to continue, or would I want to start something of my own. And I thought that I think at this stage it is right for me to start something on my own. I have had several years of experience. If not now, later it would have been more difficult. So I took that step. I always wanted to do that. I actually wanted to do it after college. Probably
Okay.
that would have been the best time. But now, at the current, if I look at the current point in time, I think I started it at just the right time. Now there is something interesting that I would like to mention here. Now that I'm running my own brand, I understood what were the mistakes that I did in the earlier stints as an employee, and
Okay.
what my managers used to, the feedback that they used to give is now what I really start understanding when I have my own team. Okay, very funny that I probably argued with them earlier, but now I would agree with all of them that their feedback, if whatever I've not listened to, I should have listened to. But anyways, better late than never.
But
I
okay, that's interesting. Can you give me a couple of concrete examples?
Sure. I think in terms of, I can definitely give you multiple, but I think the most important one is in terms of ownership. And this is what
Yeah.
my father has always told me. Whichever organization you are working with, you have to consider it as it is your own. He tells to me every day, Amit, you definitely feel a lot about your country. You want to do good for your country, right? That's the same way you have to feel about your organization that you're working with, at the same intensity, and of course same intensity for your family. That is the time you can contribute in the fullest manner. So the point of ownership, about feeling that the company is yours and seeing to it that how you can contribute from your side to it maximum. I think ownership is one single point. If I think anyone can work on, it will definitely help them and it will help the organization. And he also says one thing is that try to contribute to the organization. When I also hire interns or people who would be working with the brand, what we are looking for is how they can contribute to the brand. So when they contribute, they're definitely going to grow. So if someone says, I want to learn from this experience, that becomes a single sided focus. But when you say that you want to contribute to the organization, whenever you contribute, you're definitely going to learn. So your focus has to be the organization and not otherwise. So all these things, what my father has been telling or what my earlier managers had mentioned, I understand that okay, I made mistakes, but I admit those, and that's what I am implementing, and that's what I suggest now to others as well.
And there's another bit which I think any would-be entrepreneurs who are looking at.
Yeah,
If you're an employee, on the first day or the first week of the month, the salary gets deposited. But
right.
as the entrepreneur,
Yeah, yeah,
you can't look at a salary day.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
always going to be, you're going to put the organization, which I think is fair. As far as
yeah,
employees go, they're looking out for their interests, and
yeah,
the owner of the company or the person founding the company has a different yardstick for
yeah,
figuring
yeah.
out how things are going.
Correct, correct.
So this you've been on both sides now. I mean, you've been an employee and you're saying so. I think it's also that whole realization at some point when children argue with their parents, but when they become parents themselves, they understand. Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
some of these things are so. It's a cycle. It's a kind of learning cycle that you sort of figure out as you go along.
Correct, correct.
So you said you started off by saying you're an introvert, but
Yeah,
the requirements of being a founder
mhm.
is that you have to interact with people. You don't have a choice, and you have
Correct.
to talk to strangers. You have to talk to several people. Like you said, you went on LinkedIn and then looked up people. You began to. So how would you begin these conversations? What would you talk about when you spoke to them?
So here I would say, so of course I am an introvert, but I would say I'm a strange introvert, or the other word that is used usually is ambivert. So I'm very good when it comes to interacting with people either individually or even in a group. In certain situations, probably giving some sort of a other performance, be it dancing or singing. Those specific activities I'm not good at, but I'm definitely good when it comes to interacting with people. I've got a good sense of humor, is what people say, and I admit. And I think I'm able to have good conversations, as I said, right? If you talk without any intention of oh, meeting a specific purpose or objective, things usually work out for you. And I've had various experiences from wherever I've traveled. I've met people, so I've had very very good experiences when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to starting your own brand or a company, there are several founders who have been introverts themselves. There are
Yeah.
various examples, and I
Right.
don't think being introvert or extrovert does any impact, positive or negative, in any case. The other points, how much time you give into the activity, how are you shaping up the product, the overall company, team, marketing, how are you managing the finances, I think that plays a larger role there.
Right. So, in all of these earlier cases, you said the health and wellness. What was your analysis of what went wrong? Because obviously, it had a group of extremely smart and intelligent people
Yeah,
who
yeah.
understood a market need. So, was it that the market was not ready? What was your take on it?
We were actually, this is a very good question. I think probably the very important question as well. We also had a very good funding. I wouldn't disclose the amount, but it was definitely sizable enough that we could have done much much more. Definitely in terms of our spendings, that is something we messed up. The team was good, but again, in terms of uh, what we collectively could have done, and maybe the way it, in the direction in which it was being taken, wasn't probably handled well. It could have been handled well, and we would have been more conservative in terms of our spendings. Okay. Also, one of the important factors was that the kind of technology and the platform that we were developing had the capacity to change uh, healthcare up to a very large extent. It may sound definitely uh, out of proportion, but we wanted to be the Google of healthcare. When Google started 20 years back, and this is what uh, the founders and we all used to say to others as well, that when it started 20 years back, if you look at Google Maps, it hardly had anything. Right? I'm not sure even
Yeah.
if Google Maps existed. But as time passed by, and as the software became more mature and advanced, we can see all street level directions with details. That is exactly what we wanted to create. So Google of healthcare or Google of medicine, and
Right.
the product was definitely a very good one. Probably it should be given another try. We had received very good funding, and we were planning for the next level of funding as well, but somehow it did not work at that point in time. So it had to shut down.
Plus, I think one of the issues in all of these things, Amit, is that the power of the incumbents. That is, when you're trying to make a breakthrough into the market, there are incumbents in the market, and some of them take either rearguard action to protect their turf, or they convince their existing clients that this particular move may not be advantageous to them. That is something that very few companies factor in, because they think that okay, the consumers, my, the doctor or the uh, health organization, and they will see the benefit, but they're used to a certain way of working, which
Right.
is even in Google's case. I think there was a point at which Google was willing to sell out for 100 million or something to
Yeah, yeah.
Microsoft or Yahoo,
Correct.
and they said they didn't want it.
Correct.
So the fact that Microsoft looked at it and said, "Search, what is so big about search?" Because it's a sub function as they were
Yeah.
concerned on the desktop or whatever it is. No one had any idea that the net would grow. So at times it is also that your right place, right time.
Yeah.
Social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
Facebook came in, but Google Plus, with all its
Yeah.
resources,
Yeah.
could not replicate it.
Could not do that. Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Snapchat came in and they tried, Facebook tried replicating Snapchat and they weren't able to do it. So, it's like there is
Correct.
this thing where your organization is built for a certain level of execution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
without that level of execution or the comfort, that becomes both an advantage and a
Correct.
disadvantage over time, because that's
Correct.
what people, over
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
you learn to do something well. And
Correct.
then when you're asked to do something very different, then there is
Correct.
a, and we've seen lots of, so it's not an easy job to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Correct.
in
Here,
your
here I
case,
would like to mention one point as well when you said right place and
huh,
right time. So, of course, in terms of the level of execution, even though the idea is great, and at the same level, I would say is the right timing. The timing part is also very
right,
important.
right.
I don't know what those traveling devices are called. Those self-balancing two-wheeled where you just hold the handle and it takes you forward. There's a
Yeah,
specific
yeah. This is Segway.
Correct, Segway.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Dean
concept of
Carmen. Yeah,
Segway was somewhere in
yeah,
1950 or 1960. They had already developed it, but it
yeah.
became popular only in early 2010s, somewhere around that range. They were able to
And
make
in
it.
very specific situations.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
used in, warehouses and places like that to get around,
correct,
because
correct.
it involved a certain amount of, though in terms of product development it was wonderful and the ideas were terrific, it
Yeah,
never took off the way, like you said, which and some of these things you just can't figure out why. There's a product, I'm just taking a slight diversion here. There's a product called Humidus which was launched in the early 2000s. It was
hmm.
literally from humidity you could create drinking water, and you
Oh,
could get 25 liters of drinking water every day. So it was like the air conditioner in reverse.
correct, correct,
So the
correct.
water that comes out of the air conditioner, that was taken into a tank, run through
Right.
a filtration system, and you
Mhm.
got 25 liters of water per day.
Wow.
Now, at that point, it was sold at some 18 to 20,000 rupees. And you would think that this was in places where water is a problem, people
Uh,
should just buy this product. No,
yeah,
because the mindset was a can cost 50 rupees or 60 rupees. This
yeah,
costs 20,000 rupees.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm investing for 8-10 years upfront. I don't know if this will work. My
Mhm.
risk is much higher. A fridge gives me much more than just water. So
Correct.
it's extremely difficult to understand
Yeah,
why
yeah.
a sub product within a certain category, which seems
Okay.
like it'll just take off without any issue, and you
Right.
don't know why it has not succeeded. So,
Correct. Correct.
which brings me to, why did you, how did you arrive at the name, the Papaya Project, and
Correct.
where did you see the gap?
Yeah, okay. So what I tell people is the connection between the fruit papaya and the brand name
Right.
the papaya project is similar to what you look at gulab, which is a flower, and gulab jamun, which
Okay.
almost has no connection. The reason why we chose the name was to create a brand which not only feels young but sounds young as well. So and
Right.
that's the kind of audience. So we actually had the naming activity for almost 2 weeks. What name are we going to look
Okay.
at? But then, as you know, we had to look up on the government site for trademarks, where we found that the names that we had jotted down, which were probably better names, uh, those were already taken up, and we were sure that this name sounds young and mostly it's not going to be there. So we looked up and we got it quickly. I also checked with some of my friends as to if they felt that this name sounds good for the audience that we are targeting, because we are targeting, of course, the products are for 18 plus, but we can't directly go to that entire market which is beyond 18 years. To start with, we are looking at 18 to 45. So this is where we thought this name looks good and let's proceed with that.
Okay. So
Yeah,
let me give you a counter to this. I mean,
yeah,
most, what do you say, cosmetics are meant for slightly older skin, because it's assumed that young people have great skin anyway. The problems come when you grow older, because age tends to affect you. And for women, there is a very clear, guys are a little less, the people are less judgmental about how they look.
Yeah, yeah.
Women, it tends to be a lot more important as to, so how did you decide that you wanted to target young people who are not an obvious target audience?
Correct. Okay, so multiple points here. So first of all, our brand is gender neutral. So
Okay.
looking at the way things are currently, we didn't want to get into the binary, non-binary, male, female, that sort of a argument. We
Right.
are making products for everyone. Period.
Right.
Right. Uh, Now, also recently, I was also going through a LinkedIn post where I got to know this was something I did not know earlier, that the screen time, if you look at various generations, uh, the screen time has definitely gone higher for
Increase. Yeah.
people between 18 to 35, 40 that we look at. And the post that I was reading mentioned that there was this one person who was working with a software company. The graying of hair because of huge the screen time, that is a problem, right? So the younger audience, definitely we know that even though they have a younger, more fresher skin, they are the ones who will appreciate it. They are already appreciating it, who would like it. So it's a part of their lifestyle and need as well. So I would say 20% need and more of 80% want or lifestyle is that what we look at. So 18 to 45 is a very good audience for us. Definitely above 30, above 35, the actual need starts coming into picture where it's more of 50% need and lifestyle. But yeah, I think it's there. They want it, they enjoy it. So I'll just give you one example here itself. The article that I had put up on LinkedIn, where we were almost around 3 to 4 weeks back, we had this exhibition at a Pune based college, which was my own college, Symbiosis here in Pune. The younger folks quickly knew what it is, and they don't mind spending that amount for a premium product, right? Whereas
Okay.
if we ask their parents if they would want to spend, they are going to think about it 4 5 times. Should I spend, let's say, 500 rupees on a face wash? They probably wouldn't. But their children, quickly, without giving it a thought, what that cost, would go ahead. So that's the difference that we see.
That's very perceptive.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
one of the things that has happened is that distribution is now possible online. Earlier you had to go through that whole cycle, like you said. It
correct.
started off, I don't remember the exact brand right now, but there was this guy running a coffee shop, and he had women coming to him in Australia, and they would ask him for the coffee grinds. So he assumed that the ground coffee, whatever was left over, they would ask him for that. So
Okay.
he gave it to them, and then this happened, continued to happen for a few months. So he asked them, what are you using this for? Are you putting it in your, gardens or whatever? He said, no,
Yeah.
it's a great exfoliation
Oh,
bit.
right, right, right.
So,
Correct.
so then he said, if this is, they actually taking the trouble to come to a coffee shop, not just to buy coffee, but to ask for the grinds, then
Yeah,
maybe I should launch it. And at that point, I think this was one of the earliest brands on Instagram,
yeah, yeah.
which and they close to about 40 million now in terms of their. They were
Right.
one of
Yes.
the earliest people because they
Yeah.
were lucky that they got a lot of organic reach. Today, it's
Correct.
not possible to get that kind of organic reach because the
Absolutely.
distribution is simpler, but
Yeah.
the reach has dropped like crazy. So,
Right.
social media is ensuring that your post, especially if it's product promotion, will not go very far. So,
Right.
they
Right.
want you
Yeah.
to. Well.
Unless you pay a huge price for it. Right. Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, Amit, in terms of a career,
Yeah.
you interact with a lot of young people. You yourself are just about, one third of the way into
Yeah.
your total career.
Correct.
So, what
Correct.
are your learnings and what are your thoughts at this point in time?
Okay, so one is I would say industry specific or the brand specific points. So this is a very crowded market, okay,
Yeah,
because it's an easy market to get into with a less amount of investment. So you
correct.
have literally another skincare brand in probably a building. You have so many skincare brands. So as per our estimates, the number of skincare brands in India, it probably would be a big figure, would definitely be more than 5,000. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a very crowded market. It's a very difficult market. But my father used to say, Amit, for even if you look at entrance exams, you will say, let's say, for the IIT entrance, there will be around 2 to 5 lakhs. The number must have gone higher. But the people who really prepare for it in a very consistent, organized manner to crack that, those would be few, and those would always be few if you take up anything. Because when he
Yeah.
started his organization in 2006 in India, everyone was into IT, setting up a company for catering to the North American, Canada, US market. Right? But if you really do certain things right, those will work out for you. So, from industry specific points, I would say definitely it is very crowded. We knew that, but now it confirms, because when we are going for campaigns, right, and something that you are passionate about, ad campaigns, marketing, and all of that, that is difficult, because how do you get the attention of people, and how do you
Right.
really gain their trust? Because there are so many brands out there. So that is one point. Uh, I think another point I would say, which is more related to me, is it's currently just me. So we don't I don't have a co-founder or a partner. And I think for this type of business, where we are with a limited funding, that is definitely required. Some of the brands, those are larger brands, even though they may have just a founder right now, or a single person managing it, it must be because of funding or the network and all. But co-founder, I think, is definitely required. That is one thing that I know. And of course, the products, in terms of the products that we are developing, people are liking it. But how can we add more products, make it more exciting for the audience? That is what we're looking at. The good part is people are liking the brand, and they are coming back to us. Yeah.
Great. So, in terms of a career, when you're talking to, let's say, people who are just starting off, and I think one of the differences is that you came from, you were privileged, you had the choice.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, sometimes people are driven by what they have to do rather than what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a case like that, how would you ask people to go across or do what they, how do you find what you're interested in?
Okay, one thing that I've been thinking of this for some time now, in terms of the interns who have worked with us. So when I'll come to that. So when we have these interns who work with us, they don't do it for the money part, right? Because it's just a 1 month internship, and which is more or less an experience. So
Right,
here is what I understood, and also from whatever my reading has been, uh, in terms of spirituality, is that when you really put in your uh, time and effort from your side, you are going to be given the resources that you require.
right,
So, of course, in my case, I would say it was definitely easier to get and start my own brand, though not very easy. But for others, I would say, if you really focus on what you're doing currently at the moment, somehow you're going to get certain windows of opportunity which would be open to you, which you'll be able to take those forward. Universe gives you when you don't really ask for it, is what I've started to understand. I think you would uh,
yeah.
explain it better, or yeah, you can.
No, no, no. It's your understanding ultimately is your understanding, and it depends. Each of us is different in a different way. So
Yeah,
the influences are different. The place is different. The kind of people we meet, And I think that was very perceptive of your father to say that. Even if the 5,000 brands, only a few will succeed. Is exactly the analogy of the entrance exam is perfect, because
yeah,
you can say that there is no chance of getting into the entrance exam because
yeah.
so many people are competing, but competition is a fact of life.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, yeah. So what he meant to
So
say was, uh, of course, a few will succeed, but those few are the ones who really given the time and effort. Most of them are there just because my friend is appearing for the exam, or this industry looks good. I know so many people who have entered the skincare space where some of their
right,
relative or connection has done well. but what they
Right.
don't look at is the amount and time of money investment, effort that they have given for it. So yeah.
Right. Wonderful. We've always been speaking for an hour, so thank you very much for your time, Amit. It's been a pleasure talking to you and understanding what a young perspective on cosmetics is all about. Let me wish you and the Papaya project the very best for the future.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It was nice to speak with you as well. I would definitely like to meet you in person when I'm there in Chennai, or
Anytime.
if you are here in Pune. And wish
Feel
you
free
and
to
the team
drop
all the
in.
best.
I'll be very happy. Yeah.
What I would
Abs-
like is definitely a cup of good filter coffee, which I'm a big fan of.
that is one thing you can hope to get off. You can have your choice in Chennai off because in Chennai, the question is not whether you'll get good filter coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
The real discussion is which filter coffee from which hotel or which home is the best.
For me, it's all of these are good. Yeah.
No, but again, those are the things around which people have their discussions and arguments about.
Right. Right.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast, Amit. And again, like I said,
Yeah.
all the best for the way
Yeah.
ahead.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. That was Amit Potnis and looking to drive the Papaya project as he looks at managing a target audience which is far younger than the conventional brands in the market. So, thank you as always for listening in. Next week, we'll be back with another interesting career journey. Until then, thank you.